So first to begin, when that had happened, we were in a state of shock and disbelief.
So the initial emotion was anger, despair, sadness, because I couldn't understand that there was a group of people called management that would do such injustice to workers. I didn't even know how to comprehend it. I feel as though that the earth below me was opening up. I didn't know where to turn, what to do. You know, you had prepared for retirement and everything was in the pipeline, and then this sudden shock. You know, and then you go to bed and you get up and it's still there, and you just don't know what the days will bring. You just don't know how to process it.
We as the union, we was thinking worst case scenario that there would have been a retrenchment, not a termination for the entire workforce, right? So to wrap that around our minds, it was like craziness. And then to know how would we survive onward, right? I think that was a real frightening. It was like a horror movie for us, right? But to face the reality, I don't know how to tell you how we faced the reality, but it was really terrible for us as Steelworkers Union. And also knowing that I had an 8-month mortgage, meaning that I took out a mortgage 8 months before the termination. Took out an 8-month mortgage and also had a child December 2015, and also had 2 children from the ages of in standard 3 to standard 1, and a 3-month-old child. That was really tough for us as metal workers, and personally tough for me.
Well, when I heard the news, it was a shock, but I could have kind of dealt with it a little better than the others, I guess, because it wasn't my first time that ArcelorMittal sent me home. This would have been my 3rd time. Wow. Only this time, everyone got sent home.
Well, I want to start with the company. The company has a duty and care, any company, towards its workers. When Mittal came here, Mittal was not the empire that we know Mittal to be today. Mittal became successful off of the backs of Trinidad and Tobago citizens, off of the natural resources that he would have benefited from in Trinidad and Tobago: natural gas, water, electricity.
What was the big leap in your fortune, in the Mittal fortune?
It would be Trinidad, of course. Trinidad company used to be managed by a German group. The government was not happy managing with them. So we put in our proposal, and that was a big move.
Didn't you have to invest money in it?
No, we didn't have enough money. So we took this company on lease come buy option. So I managed this company for 5 years, and later on we did buy it.
So Mittal had a responsibility to extend a certain level of duty and care to the individuals that was responsible for his success. Yes, he was a shrewd businessman, but the individuals that were the vehicle to carry him to the point of success would have been the workers and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, that being the employees of ArcelorMittal. They did not fulfill their obligation towards the workers, and they terminate the workers in the most harsh manner possible. I call it the greatest crime against workers in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, by sending workers with 36 years service home without a red cent.
In facing the bank was really an issue. Bank wanted to do foreclosure on my property, right? I had was to deal, I had was to beg, do all sorts of things just to make it happen. The last funding that I used was my eldest daughter's educational fund, right? And let me tell you this, I feeling it up to today, because I use her fund, she is now in a place that is waiting for help, asking for help to continue her studies. Knowing that I had everything in place, but because of the situation with ArcelorMittal, I can't.
Being the single parent, well, after working for 36 years, you know, we would have a little savings. That too, I had to sort of micromanage. You know, you have to cut back on even some basic things you had to cut back on to make sure that the essential things were attended to. And the most important thing at that time was my daughter as a 3-year medical student, that I had no alternative but to stop her. Didn't even know how long it would have been. Because when you live in South and you have your children in North, the rent alone was a killer. Then you have things like medical books, daily upkeep. You know, being a girl child, even if it's a boy child, they want certain things. They're looking to you as a parent to provide those things, you know. And even in those times, she too was strong. You know, we talked and we talked that, you know, a good education is a stepping stone to your future. And I will sacrifice everything that I have in this breath, in this body, to ensure that you complete your studies. But I had to stop her indefinitely. I had to. And that was one of the major impacting things with this job loss. Seeing my child through a good education, her final stuff, her final years.
I never really fully recovered from this. Physically, sorry. Yeah, so I never really fully recovered from this, because after ArcelorMittal, I never got a stable job since. And I had a lot of challenges, financial challenges, mental challenges, you know. And up until this day, well, still having challenges and nothing still haven't been done.
So as it relates to the government has a responsibility to take care of its citizens. I see the government as parents in a home. I see the Prime Minister as a father or a mother of a home. Mittal was somebody who visited the home, would have been in the guest room, and the Mittal workers would have been the children, in this case female daughters. And what Mittal was allowed to do was to rape those daughters. The citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the employees of ArcelorMittal Point Lisas Limited were equivalent to daughters being raped by a stranger who was a guest in the household. And the parent, in this case the father at the time, thought that it was normal to turn his back and walk away while this stranger raped his daughters. The government had an obligation to ensure that this multinational company, if it desired not to fulfill its obligation, the government had a responsibility to ensure that when they left, that they did not leave the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago undone. Too many of my brothers and sisters have killed themselves. Too many of my brothers and sisters have gone into depression. Too many of my brothers and sisters have lost their homes because the government of the day did not fulfill their obligation.
Because of having to, or trying to complete the house, right, to host my family in the house, also having to see about daily needs, right, also having to pay the mortgage was really hard. So it's like 3 payments out of nothing, right? Up till this day, no one hasn't lived in my home. My home, I'm just paying a mortgage. It's like a liability. I am just paying a mortgage, right? And I could draw this example where the banking facility had contracted out some person to come and take pictures of my home, right? So it was a real battle. It was a real battle, but thanks be to God, I survived. If it wasn't for God, I don't know where I would have been, but I survived. We had to be tooled. We had to do all sorts of things in order to make life happen for us.
I worked as the port coordinator from 1994 to 2016. And before that, I was a little bit in HR and a little bit in the inventory section. I come from a good, strong family. I had a good family support. I had a good church family support. And I had a good friend, well, how to say it, my prayer group, my support group, that support. I lived in the family home, which I was in the process of doing repairs to. So all those things had to be on hold. And I kick in into gear, you know. I say you cannot sit down, you cannot wallow in this, and you have to get up and get. And I went into that mode of looking for something to do. Now, mind you, I'm 54, so who are going to hire 54? We have a lot of young people out there, so much more qualified than I was. So I started my job. I got something came my way, and I started to work for 6 months. And actually, I had to leave because it was a shift work. I had never done shift in my life, but I had to do what I had to do. And then shift work coming in late at nights, the country not safe. I had to give up that job, and I stayed home again for another 6 months. And then I got something a little more sturdy, that the focus with that salary was all about my daughter. We eat basic, we buy basic, but we started to save more again for her, her stuff at Mount Hope, her rent, her upkeep, her books, and that sort of thing. So I battled with that job, you know. It came my way, and I thank God for that. And I stayed on for a couple years. Well, I was able to send her back after about 9-10 months, because I started to pull in my savings. I had to. She was the main focus in everything.
Well, when we got sent home, initially I was young into a marriage. I got divorced, and everything kind of fell apart. You know, I got feeling like, what next? Where to go? Nowhere to turn to. And as men, you never really speak out, never really talk to anyone, you know, so it was tough. It was tough. At that point in time, I had recently took out a loan from the bank also, and the bank was calling on my phone until I had to use whatever savings I had to repay the loans. And because, as you all know, we never really got any separation benefits from the company.
I saw in January of this year that the Honorable Minister of Labour, that is Mr. Leroy Baptiste, would have announced to the public that the government of the day is about to carry legislative change to the Parliament to be approved, that being changes to the Retrenchment, Severance and Benefit Act. And the changes would directly impact scenarios like the one that occurred with ArcelorMittal and the employees and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. In that, if a company is winding up, if a company is closing, and the company decides that it wants to leave for business reasons or whatever other reason, the company at the end of the day would have to pay workers terminal benefits, meaning their separation benefits. So an individual who has worked 36 years, the company would have to honor the 36 years, and there would be equity for that individual's service. It has not been passed as yet, but I hope that the government of the day does differently than the government that would have been there for 10 years, for a 10-year period, who had attorneys who would have been attached to the Mittal Group. Mr. Alwari would have worked for the Mittal Group for 15 years. Mr. Amor sat opposite to me on that ill-fated day, being March the 11th, and said to us that the company did not have a legal obligation to pay any separation benefit to myself and my other colleagues. And under those circumstances, these individuals being the Attorney General of the country, of the government, after had an obligation, if they were patriotic, if they love their country and the people of the country, to move swiftly to bring legislation to change those loopholes. Yes, you are attorneys at the time and you work for Mittal and you served your master at that time, but when you became the Attorney General, you did not serve the people of Trinidad and Tobago in that instance to bring about the required legislative change. And I hope that this government, under their reign, would rectify that issue and would bring an end to the suffering of ArcelorMittal workers, and by extension any other worker who potentially could face the similar fate to the fate that my members and my colleagues would have faced in 2016.
Echoes from the furnace, the men and women ArcelorMittal left behind. The closure, the greatest crime committed against workers in TNT. The closure of ArcelorMittal Point Lisas in 2016 was a watershed moment for Trinidad and Tobago's industrial sector. While it felt sudden to many, it was the culmination of years of global market shifts, disputes over utility costs, and it was well-timed and orchestrated. Here is a timeline of the events leading up to and following the closure. Vision 1975 to 1980. Dr. Eric Williams and his government had the vision to diversify Trinidad and Tobago's economy and create the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, which saw the construction and commission of the steelmaking facility at a cost to taxpayers of 1 billion TTD in 1980. The facility was named the Iron and Steel Company of Trinidad and Tobago, ISCOT. May 1st, 1989, the facility was leased to Caribbean Ispat Limited, a Mittal family-owned company, for $10 million USD per year for 10 years. In May 1994, Caribbean Ispat Limited purchases the plant for $70 million USD. In 1995 to 2007, the facility became extremely profitable and the source and foundation of the rise of the Mittal Empire, as confirmed in his documentary. 2008, Mittal completed a hostile acquisition and takeover of one of its main competitors, the Arcelor Steelmaking Group. This achievement by the Mittals resulted in the creation of ArcelorMittal and ballooned the numbers of expatriates coming to Trinidad and Tobago, mainly from South America. Following this, approximately 80 senior employees were offered and accepted VSEP. In 2009, approximately 119 employees were retrenched by the company, resulting in trade dispute number 382 of 2009, which the retrenchment exercise was determined to be flawed and unfair. In 2009 to 2015, the company at Point Lisas moved away from manufacturing special grades of steel orders and produced mainly construction steel. Also in 2015, Chinese and Turkish steel manufacturing companies began dumping steel on the international market due to a steel glut. The road to closure 2012 to 2015. November 2012, Canadian national Robert Bilal becomes Managing Director of ArcelorMittal Point Lisas Limited. In 2014, ArcelorMittal owner and Executive Chairman worldwide, Mr. Lashmi Mittal, visits the plant facility for the last time. November 23, 2015, the company idles its Point Lisas operations for the first time, laying off 480 workers for an initial 6-week period. December 2015, ArcelorMittal officially announces a provisional shutdown, citing a global oversupply of steel and a sharp decline in orders for DRI. December 2015 to March 2016, ArcelorMittal management and port staff, retained with shipping and material handling contractors, and the majority of its manufactured inventory, billets, coils and DRI, is removed and shipped away from the compound. Thereafter, PwC is engaged and visits the Point Lisas plant and completed its assessment. The final collapse. February 2016. After a brief 2-week return to work, employees are laid off again for another 6 weeks. March 10, 2016. In a major legal decision, the Industrial Court rules in favor of the Steelworkers Union of Trinidad and Tobago, declaring the previous layoffs illegal and ordering the company to pay its workers. March 11, 2016. In a move that shocked the nation, ArcelorMittal announces the permanent closure and voluntary liquidation of the plant just 1 day after the court ruling. Over 644 workers are immediately terminated. On March 12, 2016, then Prime Minister Keith Rowley issues a public statement calling the ArcelorMittal shutdown punitive and disrespectful. 1 month later, April 5, 2016, ArcelorMittal enters voluntary liquidation with its largest creditors being Mittal-owned companies and accounting for 87% of its alleged debts. On March 16, 2016, the closure triggers a domino effect, leading to the shutdown of Central Trinidad Steel Limited, Centrin, which depended on ArcelorMittal for raw materials, putting another 200 people out of work. Liquidation and legal battles. 2016 to 2020, the plant facility remains shut down, while liquidator Keith Kelshaw and agent Keith Daniel manages the assets. From 2016 to present, SWUTT has been calling on the government to intervene and rectify this situation. Marches, peaceful pickets, dozens of written letters, proposals for the restart along with scores of appearances in the media. June 2016, SWUTT, with the assistance of experts, presents the government of Trinidad and Tobago with a plan to restart the steel-making facility in Point Lisas. May 2019, Artena Steel Holdings Limited won the bid to purchase the Point Lisas steel-making facility. To date, nothing has been done for the steelworkers or legislatively by the former government. Although former Attorney Generals Al-Rawi, who worked for the Mittal Group for 15 years prior to entering electoral politics, and Reginald Armour, who was the attorney present when ArcelorMittal terminated all of its workers in Trinidad without any separation benefits. The previous government, who had almost 10 years, did not even issue steelworkers who were on the breadline without any separation benefit a food card, although this request was made. January 2020, a central bank working paper highlights the massive impact of the closure, noting an average fall in non-energy exports of US $259.2 million annually between 2016 and 2018. June 7, 2023, a glimmer of hope appears as TT Iron Steel Company Limited signs a sale and purchase agreement to acquire the AMPL facility from the liquidator Christopher Kelshaw. The agreed planned sale price is $30 million USD. However, a year later, only a down payment of $3 million USD was paid in July of 2024. The sale agreement for the plant required the total payment to be completed by December 31st, 2024, of which $28.4 million USD still remains outstanding at present. Notwithstanding this, the preferred bidder, TTISCL, occupies and was given possession of the entire facility by the liquidator. Note that the liquidator has stated to the creditors at the meeting of July 3, 2025, that the TTISCL financiers have not released the balance of money to purchase the facility because of the collapse of the Dragon Gas deal. Previously, the liquidator had made it clear that the sale of the facility was not contingent on the buyer securing any utilities and was separate and apart, as a purchaser could buy the plant and ship it abroad. This new development brings into question whether the liquidator is carrying out his fiduciary duty and if he is seeking the best interests of the creditors. It seems after over 2 years that this company is receiving preferential treatment from the liquidator. July 2024, TT Iron Steel officially takes ownership of the plant, announcing plans for a phased refurbishment to restart operations using low-carbon technology. In January 2026, Minister of Labour Leroy Batiste announced plans to amend the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act to remedy existing flaws that expose workers to the same fate as former ArcelorMittal steelworkers. while the facility 10 years later is still not operational, with many former workers still engaged in legal matters and appeals for compensation from the company. Flawed legislation still exists, leaving workers and citizens exposed to the same.
Just a simple question. I am a worker worried about maybe being retrenched and wondering if the existing protections are inadequate, and I'm asking the question of the Labour Minister, when can I expect the legislation to be tightened in law?
Yeah,
that
at
I will
least
have that protection?
within the first quarter of 2017, the legislation should reach the Parliament. The situation regarding the ArcelorMittal workers is a very unfortunate one, where they were all sent home without any form of compensation. Now, that is really not an acceptable position, because the Honorable Attorney General have given the indication, have given the assurance, once it reaches there, it will be addressed with a level of speed to be taken to the Parliament. So the government, through the Minister of Labour and the team at the Ministry of Labour, we have been working tirelessly, quietly, Fazil, but tirelessly.
We will not just sit back and say it's unrealistic. We will fight. If we lose at the end, we lose, but we will not give up.